All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Heights podcast. I think it's season 2 now, right? Year 2. I'm sitting here with Coach Hedrick, fresh off a win on Friday.
Yep.
So, Coach, how was it? How'd the game go?
Oh, it was great. Kids played really well. It's our
Yeah.
kickoff classic, so it doesn't really count in the standings, but played a great program in Osceola. The kids battled hard, and we're able to actually do some things that we responded to. We were hoping the message you had on Friday morning at Adoration for the whole football team, talking about perspective and perseverance, and we had an opportunity to experience both of those things. And I thought the guys did a really good job. I think we're off to a good start.
And I think, man, I'm not going to say I'm a good luck charm, but as soon as I came in third quarter, you guys dropped an 80-yard bomb for a touchdown. Like, literally, I walked in the gate, boom, touchdown. Place goes nuts. I'm like, all right, I got to stay now. But then I had to leave, and you guys ended up winning.
Was Gemma with you?
Gemma was not with me. So
I was going to say, she's the good luck charm.
But one thing, so just a quick note that Coach Hedrick, this is such a beautiful thing. Every Friday game day, first thing they do in the morning, he gets all the football guys, first period in school, and they go to the chapel for a prayer time just to kick off those game days. So what a beautiful way to set that perspective. And that's one word I know, kind of preparing for this, we talked about is perspective. Starting this new school year, anytime you start a new journey, kind of knowing where you want to go, having that perspective, because you're going to get those speed bumps, you're going to have struggles, you're going to have those moments where you doubt yourselves, but really having that perspective of where you want to go, even amidst the trials. So I don't know if you want to speak into that, Coach, and kind of talk about what that word means to you.
Well, it's been on my heart a lot lately because we're starting a new season. And anytime that we do that, it's completely different than the previous years. No matter what we want to expect from it, it's a different season, different players, different coaches, the whole thing. And so we talked about the importance of understanding that the destination, it's really about the journey. And so being able to have the perspective to understand that it takes time and that we're building something, just like we are in the new school year, just like we are with this new studio that Miko put together, like we are, the students can't make all A's the first week of school. They're building towards that, creating good habits, building relationships with teachers, getting into a rhythm in their school and their time management. So I think that's really important, and we talk about that all the time. Yeah.
Gosh, man. I mean, Matt, when you were talking about the other morning, I asked you, hey, what do the guys need to hear during that prayer time? And you talk about perseverance, perspective, but it's really kind of like knowing where you want to go. Because so often we start something, and I kind of think back when I started high school, and I kind of had all these goals for basketball. I wanted to be, do this well at basketball that season, or, lead the team to this, goal. But really, like, if we don't have that, even our personal lives and our journey, if we don't have those moments where, like, I want to be here in my relationships. I want to be here in my relationship with God. I want to be here in the way I carry myself on the field as a coach or as a student, right? So, like, knowing the end goal, and I love the Bible passage we picked was, I want to say it was Corinthians with Paul, St. Paul, talking about, like, man, he was in prison, I believe, and he was just talking about, man, where do we want to go as a church, as Christians? Like, how do we have this concrete idea of how we want to follow Christ? And I think the temptation is sometimes we get, whether we doubt ourselves or we lose ourselves amidst the trials, but how do you stay motivated, keeping that perspective, especially this season? Like, you're going to have bumps, you're going to have moments where you're like, man, are we that good, right? Or a player doubts themselves. And how do you keep their eyes on, no, it's about this process? Because one cool thing you mentioned is the scoreboard was not on during the game. Like, it's not about the scoreboard. It's about, man, how are we growing as men, as a team? So how do you keep that with your team and your players?
Well, I wonder how that happens, right? Why that night was the scoreboard not on after we had that conversation about perspective and about understanding that's a process and that we're not really looking at the scoreboard, that the players are thinking scoreboard, but as coaches, as adults, as mentors, we're thinking about what we're building. And so I think it's about being consistent, in everything that we do, just kind of showing up every day with a good attitude. We talk about attitude and effort every day. And kind of putting the work in, just kind of going about trying to get better and not making excuses. And
what's that shirt? What's the shirt mean?
Doesn't matter, get better.
Doesn't matter, get better.
Yeah, that's kind of our motto this year. So
because there's a lot of excuses we throw in there. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, it's too early. Oh, I'm stressed out. My girlfriend's being mean. Whatever. I'm gonna fight. Whatever. So it's gonna affect my football. But it's like, no, like, we're here to get better. That's all we can focus on. You know? What a powerful message. Put all the other stuff aside. And it's a part of our journey, the struggles, but what is it about? Together, we're pursuing this goal,
Well, it speaks directly to mindset or perspective, right? is that idea of doesn't matter, get better. I mean, you know, you don't want to be so casual about it. Things matter. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But once you realize that the event has occurred, the situation is what it is, you got to move on. You got to find ways to get better.
Yeah.
And so in football, it works pretty well, right? If you get a penalty, okay, doesn't matter, get better. If you jump off sides, doesn't matter, get better. It works in life as well, but maybe a little bit more challenging at times, for sure. Yeah.
Man, when you were talking to, I thought of this quote on my desk. It's from Saint Mother Teresa. She said, "I can do no great things, only small things with great love." And so often, even as a dad now, and we have our second on the way, a little girl on the way, and it was kind of overwhelming at times. Whenever I meet a parent who's a parent of like multiple kids, they're like, "Man, how do you?" My parents had 7, and I always think like, "Mom, you're a saint. Like, how did you put it?" She had 5 boys in a row and then 2 girls, and I'm like, "Man," and I know how crazy we were. But I think about too, because there's so many things in our day that seem meaningless. You know, it could even be simply just eating my lunch or opening a door, or how I talk to somebody greeting me at the door, or how I talk to the security guard when I pull it. You know, these little moments that I think so often, sometimes I forget, but I have to be reminded that it's there where our greatness lies. It's in those little moments, you know, because anybody can be, we watch the Olympics, you know, everyone wants to be that person on stage with the medal and hearing their Star Spangled Banner play or whatever their country, their anthem, and that's amazing, but how did they get there?
Right.
You know, that's just athletically. They did it little by little, you know, every single day. My coach in college used to have a penny jar, and it was a huge penny jar in the locker room. Every day after practice, we would put everybody get 1 penny, and you put it in there, you know. And after day 1, we saw 15 pennies. Day 2, 30 pennies. Day 3, 45. You know, and it would keep going up. And after 4 or 5 months, man, that thing's filling up. You know, but it was a powerful message that we don't reach greatness, we don't fill it up in 1 day or 1 week. It's like, man, being faithful every day. And there were days where he said, "You don't get a penny." You know, if we came to practice and you could tell our hearts weren't there, he's like, "No pennies today." You know, so it sent a powerful message about, man, the little things every day. So I don't know. That came to my mind.
No, I love it. I mean, I think there's meaning in all of that, and just the idea of, like I said, just being really consistent and trying to find ways to sort of motivate yourself. You know, we were talking the other day, I was talking to the kids about the idea of when things go wrong, you have to figure out a way to think about your team. Like, how can I help the team? It's really about that. How can I help the team? Because it's so easy to be centered on me. And that's the disease of me that we talk about as coaches that sort of infiltrates into or permeates into your culture, and you can't have it. And as soon as that starts to happen, you become very, you know, focused on yourself, and you're not really contributing to the team. And so,
and it's a lot of pressure too. I feel like, oh my gosh, everyone's watching me, and they're going to see what I mess up, and they're expecting me to do, you know. But if you think about, no, it's not just me, but these 70 people on this team, you know, it kind of takes the limelight off, you know.
I think so.
Yeah. But I mean, Matt, so one, like, new school year, new season, and I think often of like the fear of failure. You know, I think that's something that athletics portrays so beautifully, but it's in each one of our lives, and we may have talked about it in another episode. But really, like, that fear of failure, like, we all know, oh, I want to be great at this, or I want to be a great husband, or I want to be a great dad, or I want to be a great student. But man, what if there's days where, like, I'm gonna fail, you know, and just kind of going into it knowing that. And how do we keep going forward with that perspective in mind? I don't know if you kind of have perspective on that.
Well, I mean, I do. I mean, first of all, I think your faith is so critical, and realizing that we're not in control of everything, and giving control away to God, and just saying, "Please help me. I'm going to screw this up." Over and over again, because I'm human. But I think, you know, the whole idea of failure, it's like, you know, what is it? False evidence appearing real. Have you heard that before? False evidence appearing real. You know, this idea of fear is what is that really, and why do we allow that to creep in? We had a player today. I don't want to get into names, obviously, but the kids, as you know, get in the social media world, and they start going back and forth with all these little platforms that the student bodies get on for these games, and they start talking about each other as if they know each other, and they're kind of cruel about it. One of the guys was pretty upset about something that happened today, and I thought to myself, and I addressed the entire team, why do we give others the power to determine how we are going to feel? And that's just crazy to me. Now, I'm also 54. I'm not 16.
Yeah.
But I was trying to give them that perspective today. It's like, listen, don't give somebody that power.
Yeah.
We talk about E plus R equals O all the time. Events plus response equals outcome. Well, the event you have no control over. Somebody posting something on social media just to kind of harass you, in probably sort of a fun way in some cases. You don't have a control over that, but what's the outcome that you want? So how do you respond to it? And
only one of those you can control is the
that's
R.
it. Only the R.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's constant messages. Every time there's an opportunity to listen to what they're experiencing, there's a lesson in there somewhere.
Yeah. Gosh, man. I mean, I know in my personal journey, I mentioned basketball, but high school, college, that was kind of everything. It determined how I felt each day. Like if I had a good game, I felt great. Bad game, didn't feel great. Felt down about myself, and I felt like I had a good head on my shoulders. Like I was, got good grades, and was good about my faith, and all the things. But I still was. My identity was wrapped up in whether I could put a ball in a hoop or not, or the scoreboard. And I think it's so hard as we grow and mature, even as adults, to put value in the things that truly matter. Obviously, sports matters, but man, what is the eternal perspective that we need? Because if I go through my life thinking, oh my gosh, like I don't make as much money as this person, or my house isn't as big as this person, or I didn't score as many points as this person. Like we're never going to be enough, if we're always kind of measuring our success according to someone else's standards or some, material standard here on earth, But at the end of the day, what is the ultimate goal that like each of us is made for? It's really for heaven. It's like, man, did I say yes to God with my life? Did I become that man or woman God made me to be, to use my gifts to serve other people? And that doesn't take a lot of talent. It just takes an open heart, know?
Right.
And I think sports teaches you how to do that, because it's great to be the person scoring the touchdown, but just as important as that person is the person getting the water for the players. And I know you share that with the guys, but it's so important for us as adults too to recognize, man, it doesn't matter my role. What it matters is, am I saying yes to what I'm called to do each day? Go back to that Mother Teresa quote. Yeah.
It's not, but it's so hard for these young people to have that perspective. Again, to come back to that word.
Yeah.
So it takes constant reminders and constant messaging from people like us and from parents and adults and people with that kind of experience, just to remind them constantly, to lead them to that mindset at some point, hoping that it can kick in, that they realize that it's not really about all the stuff that's going on in their lives right now, the little things. So that's one of my missions, and one of your missions, obviously, being in education like we are, is to help them understand that. And it's a relentless pursuit. Relentless.
And it's not like when I was younger, I used to think that you kind of reach a plateau and you're like, oh yeah, now I just figured life out,
Right.
But no, like you've been alive a little bit longer than me, but no one's, you never reach that plateau of like, all right, life, I got it. There's always this challenge. There's always a challenge that, like, if you, like a knife gets sharp, but it's going to dull eventually. You got to keep sharpening if you want it to work well. In our own lives. I mean, I know for me personally, gosh, I always try to get to school early and have prayer time, quiet prayer time. Because I know there have been days where I haven't had that. And I notice, man, I'm not as sharp, with the way I love people. And I'm not as patient. I'm not as generous. I'm like, man, I have to stay sharp. I have to stay faithful, if I'm going to, live the way God's called me to live. So I don't know what that is in your life, where you're like, man, these are ways that I stay sharp. These are ways that I stay with that, keep that perspective, when there's so many ways for that perspective to be diluted, and to be pulled,
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it on this podcast before, but just the moments in the morning before I get to school and the mindset that I can create in a positive way before I get out of the car and walk into the building or walk into the stadium to talk to these kids. And it's really an intentional thing about praying and about listening and about taking in information, taking in lyrics, taking in words, taking in messages that help me prepare for the kind of person that I want to be. Because it's a constant challenge, especially with young people, and they do things that you don't want them to do, or they're not on time, or they're not prepared. And there's this urge to be reactive. And so it sets you up to be a little bit more loving, a little bit more empathetic during the day. We talked to the kids the other night. We had some unsportsmanlike penalties. And kids, it was a very aggressive game, and both on both sides. It got a little chippy, and probably the most emotional I get is when our guys do something that I consider to be unsportsmanlike or below the line.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see in their faces sometimes almost discouragement, as if they think I don't want them to compete.
Yeah.
And so after the game, I told them, I was like, guys, listen, I need to explain this a little bit better. The reason, one of the responses is always, well, coach, they did. Well, you'll get that as a parent all the time. And my response to them, almost emotionally, was, we don't care about what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We care about what you're doing.
Mm.
Like, our responsibility is to you.
Yeah.
Our responsibility is to your parents.
Mm.
And we pray for you guys at night. We pray for you guys before and after practice. Right? We pour into you guys, and we try to give you guys the information that you need to make good decisions. And I told him, I said, it's not about the scoreboard. It's about those things and creating that opportunity for you guys as you get older. I said, I don't want to do it if it's not about that. So the point to having said all that is, one of the ways to do it is it's got to be constant. It's got to be relentless.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot give in to that. And I told him, I'm like, I'm never going to stop being upset about that.
Unsportsmanlike calls.
Yeah. And so there's a fine line, right? You want to be aggressive. It's a tough sport. But I think to constantly pursue that sort of mindset with these kids and help them understand that these are the things that are really important in life.
Amen.
That's all we can do.
Amen, man.
Yeah.
Now, last thing, I want to ask you about your goals for this year. You got the football season. You have your personal journey. Have you thought about, I haven't asked you this, but have you thought about like your goals and your perspective on this upcoming year? Tough question.
Yeah, it is. I think about that stuff. I'm not a big goal, write down my goals kind of person. I probably should be. Yeah, my goal is to be a better coach. And when I say that, not as an X's and O's guy, but more of a leader of young men, and how can I do that, and how am I called to do that, and focusing on that every single day. Not only the players, but the coaches as well. Maybe impact their lives a little bit better. And then, of course, the next step in my life with my family and my kids kind of being out of the house and connecting with my wife and building that relationship to even, newer heights.
Amen. Because that's an adjustment, right? The kids are out now.
Yeah, those things are all important.
So. Oh, that's good. No, man, that's awesome, man. That's good.
So what about you? I mean, what are your goals? New beginnings?
Gosh,
new year?
I think this year, I caught myself last year focused on like programs and systems, and which is important. But like the word that kept coming back to me is relationship. Like it really was just like, man, relationships with the students, relationship with staff and teachers, because a big part of my role is to really just journey with people in their faith. Like be a, just a companion in the journey, wherever they're at, because each of us is unique in our faith journey. But that word relationship, because if we don't have a relationship, man, they're not going to trust you. And like, why go somewhere if you don't trust the person who's journeying with you? And I think about Jesus and what he did. And the first thing he did wasn't say like, you need to do this, you need to change this. He said, Zacchaeus, let me come to your house and have dinner with you. He would say, come and follow me. Come and see where I stay. Just let me form a relationship with you. And then he would teach us about the Father, And I don't know, just come back to that word, man, just investing, like the systems and programs and planning, that's very important. It's going to happen. Right. But it's like, man, I got to be super intentional every day. Like I have a list of students right now and, transfer students, for example. Transfer students, it's, big adjustment. I think this year we have like 70, something like that, a lot of transfer students. And I put down my list as a goal in this first quarter. It'll probably end up being first semester. But to meet with each one of them individually, at least once for like 5 minutes, just to see how they're doing, to say a prayer for them, like ask them if they have any intentions, just to check in, And so just things like that to say, man, that's more important. Those 5 minutes with that one student are more important than any great system or retreat we're planning out, Right. So I don't know. That's the word that's been on my heart for this year.
Yeah, it's connecting. You're connecting. So I mean, this just kind of popped into my head as you've inspired me in a lot of ways. I just got to tell you, and part of it is because what I want to be able to do is connect better with our players and our coaches, but really our players for the most part, because again, we talk about trust, and that's one of the key components of trust is that connection piece. And and watching you interact with people, one of the things that just blows me away every single time is you know everybody's name, or at least it seems that way. I'm sure there's one or two that you haven't gotten down yet. And part of that is, yes, you're a smart guy and certainly you pay attention, but there's certainly has to be a part of that where it's very intentional and you're trying hard to make sure you know their name. So you're thinking about it. And it's inspirational to me that you're finding ways to get to know our community.
Yeah.
And by doing that, you're making these little connections. And by doing that, you're inspiring people to see why is he that way? What does he have that maybe I'm missing or I'm not quite connected to?
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful. And so I've been trying to do that as well with our players, focusing less on being the leader and making sure everybody's on time and make sure they're wearing the right things and make sure they're hustling and focusing more on like, how can I connect? How can I build a little bit of a relationship? How can I maybe see them in a different way and find or catch them doing something good instead of worrying about maybe where they're falling short.
Yeah. Man, that's so good.
I don't know. Something to think about. I think that's really cool.
I think it's super important. And it's something that stayed with me, one last thought, but something that stayed with me. There was a youth minister Peyton had, my wife, growing up, and she had me watch this interview he did, this man named Todd. And she always says this guy was a hero for her in her own journey of faith and was like almost like a father figure, another father figure for her. And this guy Todd, in the interview, one of the things he said, he was doing youth ministry in a parish, but he said as soon as a person comes in the room, if they don't feel excited that you're seeing them, they're going to be like, why am I here? So he made a point of like, oh, Johnny, you were here. Oh, Sarah, you were here. Like, even though he kept doing it over and over and over again, as soon as the student or the young man or woman walked in the room, all they felt was excitement that I'm here, And from there, they're like, oh, like this guy cares about me, right? This is a safe place for me. So yeah, I think it all goes back to connection, that word you're talking about, and that powerful gift that we have when we build those relationships, But Matt, thanks, man. This is good. So new season, new year, one game in. And I think it just takes a lot, that faithfulness, every single day saying, yes, Lord, this is what I'm called to, just being faithful. So thanks for being faithful.
I love it.
All right, Matt.
Man.
All right, guys.
JP.
Hey, we'll see you soon.
Appreciate it.
Have a great start to the school year, all right? We'll see you.